Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be doing a box office preview for this upcoming weekend and talking about what in the world is going on with the reporting about Tuesday, July 4th, Independence Day 2023's box office, as some sites are indicating that Sound of Freedom beat the brand new film from Disney, Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny, which is insane when you think about the differences in budget, the differences in theaters, all the different metrics that should be going the way of Dial of Destiny not happening, whereas Sound of Freedom is doing much better than what I think anyone would have expected. We'll dive into those numbers. There's a lot of people reporting that Sound of Freedom won outright, but there's also reporting coming out of Deadline that that is not actually the case. Which one is true? We'll have to figure that out, and we'll also have to talk about why it is that we probably see some of the discrepancies in those numbers. Before we get further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, not that fire button, Odyssey, and smash the Rumble button as well. Also, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with the bell notification on. That way you know every time the video or live stream goes live on the channel. So as you can see over at Box Office Pro, we finally have our box office projections for this upcoming weekend, which is the second full weekend for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Remember that this film did have a very interesting release schedule, as it came out a little early, also came out over the course of the, continued to come out, continued to have its performances over the course of the July 4th holiday as well. And what we're seeing from this is that this movie is actually not doing really well at all. Even people in the mainstream media, right, the same people that are going to be referencing Sound of Freedom, even have to say that ultimately this is indeed not too far off. The 5-day total, including Independence Day, not too far off from Superman Returns' disaster. So if they're going to talk about Superman's Returns as being a disaster over its holiday frame back in 2005, for them to have that in the same sentence that Dial of Destiny really does say quite a bit about what they are saying and what they are seeing about this movie. Box Office Pro right now in their projections, Deadline will probably have their projections out later today, if not already. It's always difficult to find those articles for some reason. I think it's Tony and Nance trying to run away from me, it seems. But anyway, Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny is projected by Box Office Pro to make $28.6 million. Now, what's interesting about this is this would only be a 53% drop, which I think many people will look at and say, I was expecting it to be a lot higher than that. Two things to keep in mind. One, these are, of course, projections. So this is Box Office Pro looking at, okay, here is the Monday to Tuesday, or rather, here is the Saturday to Sunday drop, the Sunday to Monday drop, Monday to Tuesday. Let's try and see if we can figure out exactly what those metrics are, if there's a pattern to those drop-offs, so that we can then extrapolate about what we think is going to happen in the course of the second weekend. They also take into account factors like not a lot of competition. However, that being said, it is interesting that there is at least one film which is not going to make huge amounts of money at the box office, right? It's not going to be a billion-dollar film, but it is a part of a franchise that has a very dedicated fan base. Some of them probably are some of the audiences that Dial of Destiny might be trying to actually go for, and that is a new Insidious film, Insidious: The Red Door, coming from Sony Pictures Screen Gems, right? So this horror film, and what's interesting about it is if you actually look at that percentage, right? Let's assume that 53% drop actually happens. Well, that would mean Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny would make $28.6 million in its second domestic weekend. Now, that's still actually pretty bad because remember that opening was a lot less than what had initially been anticipated, to come in around $60 million domestic and then have a 53% drop from that. Again, it's not a great hold. It's not a catastrophic hold, but it's also not a great hold either. And it also has to be taken within the context of everything that has been made by that movie so far. That would bring the total domestic run up to about $125.8 million, which again continues to spell the film's struggle, most likely struggle, to reach worldwide $350 to $400 million, that much more of a likelihood. So we'll have, of course, the full box office breakdown this coming Sunday when we finally get those estimates out. But it is interesting nonetheless that we are seeing this. What's also interesting, and I think Valiant Renegade talked about this, shout out to him as always, he talked about how it's interesting how Disney, and Disney has been kind of notorious for this, they delayed releasing their estimates. They delayed releasing the box office numbers for Dial of Destiny's Monday and Tuesday numbers. So those numbers actually did not get released until just yesterday. And that is something that, again, some studios kind of hold on to it, especially when they see their films aren't doing very well, because they're trying to delay the amount of bad press that can be written about a given movie, because bad press, there's that old adage that, any press is good press. Not necessarily, right? When it comes to a movie and when it comes to people reading those articles and reading those headlines, if the articles are all skewing negative, that means less likely are people going to go see the film. if they haven't gone to see it already. But this $28.6 million is interesting because that's assuming a 53% drop. If we see, and again, word of mouth on this film has not been very good. When you actually, again, look at the numbers, they are quite abysmal, especially when you compare it to back in 2008's Crystal Skull, which, remember, was significantly ahead, right? At this same point in release, again, first Tuesday to first Tuesday, Crystal Skull, adjusted for inflation using the numbers calculations, $232 million. Whereas $83 million is what's currently had by Dial of Destiny. So this movie is expected to break $100 million this coming weekend. However, and also it did indeed beat the first Tuesday, but remember, this first Tuesday for this movie, Dial of Destiny, was on the 4th of July holiday, whereas back in Indiana Jones Crystal Skull, that film came out in May of 2008. So it did not have that same type of bump. So what's interesting is that even with the holiday, people being off from work, a federal holiday, it still only managed to barely beat out Crystal Skull. So this is currently the state of what this movie is seeing. So some might say, okay, well, look at that Saturday to Sunday drop. That's not a huge figure. That's not a huge drop right there. So it seems like it's having some decent holds. And that's probably the reason why you're seeing from people like Box Office Pro them suspecting it'll have a 53% drop. But let's assume it's higher. Let's say it does drop closer to 60%. If that happens, guess what? Looking at the number 2 movie expected to be number 2 movie of this weekend, The Red Door, Insidious, that film is expected to make 24.1. Basically, if you get to the point where 60% of the box office drops for Dial of Destiny, you get to a situation where The Red Door, theoretically, has a chance of beating out the second weekend numbers for Dial of Destiny. Now, we already see, again, a lot of the conversation surrounding the number 3 film, which, again, is impressive that this film is going to be in the number 3 film, especially beating out newcomers Joyride from Lionsgate, $8.4 million, a film that John Campea says was one of the best comedies in years. Sure it was, John. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse at $8 million, again, continuing to also, do very, very well. But going again back to what we saw with what's going on with Sound of Freedom, remember that they have even admitted that there was indeed a fight happening. Right? Tony over at Deadline says Sound of Freedom and Indiana Jones duke it out on holiday 4th, and have even asked the question, does Insidious actually, is it able to upset Indiana Jones this coming weekend? Now, here is what I think is causing some controversy. I know someone tagged me saying, please cover this because they seem to be wrong. Well, here's the thing, okay? It is difficult to tell at this time where Deadline is getting its numbers versus where the numbers in Box Office Mojo are getting theirs. Something that some people don't know is that there are different metrics out there. There are different analytical companies. These analytical companies get all of the data in and report on these estimates, report on these actuals as far as actual ticket sales, as far as the amount of dollars spent on a given movie. And so sometimes you will see differences. That's why if you ever wonder why the numbers and Box Office Mojo have different totals after a film's release has been finished, a lot of it is because they're using different analytical firms and analytical companies. So it could very well be that Deadline is not skewing the numbers, but rather they are using their own firm, their own analytical firm, the one that they go to, whereas the numbers might be using something a little bit different. However, I do think that it is definitely a point against Deadline's numbers when you have both the numbers and Box Office Mojo in agreement, as that is oftentimes not the case, though I think Box Office Mojo is kind of playing catch up these days because of some pretty recent and consistent, over the past few years especially, mistakes in data entry, etc. But as it says right here, according to Deadline, they say Sound of Freedom actually got second place to Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny. They report that Indiana Jones on Tuesday got 11.6 million, whereas Sound of Freedom got 11.5. Now here's the thing with that though. Even if that is the case, even if Indiana Jones does still end up beating out Sound of Freedom, right? If those are the accurate numbers, that's still abysmal. Because then you're having a film that was only in 2,700 screens, 2,600 screens, not getting very far from beating Dial of Destiny coming into its first Monday and first Tuesday. In this case, it's first Tuesday on a holiday. Right, the 4th of July holiday. Now, again, these box office prognosticators will say, well, July 4th has never been a huge box office, draw for a lot of things. And it's like, well, maybe it's because the movies that have been released over the holiday frame haven't been ones that are going to bring people out. Maybe that's going to be it, Tony, instead of it being because of the holiday itself, people, being distracted and not doing other things. It's kind of this silly dichotomy and a silly excuse that they oftentimes will use, right? Why is it that certain holidays, they will say, oh, these holidays mean more people go see it, whereas these won't? Maybe it's because the movies that have been released over said holidays have not been that good or have not been able to bring a lot of people out. Maybe that could be it. But again, the other bit of this drama is the fact that you look over at the Tuesday reports from the numbers, and look, they're saying that it won. That Sound of Freedom won by a pretty clear amount. $14.2 million is what's being reported by the numbers as of the recording of this video at over 2,600 screens. That's $5,400 per theater. It's a very strong per theater ratio for a film's opening day in this way. And as I've mentioned previously in my review of the film and of the strategy that Angel Studios is doing, they have this whole pay it forward campaign, meaning if you want to see the movie and you can't afford it, you can actually claim a free ticket. You can also donate money to this in order to support people getting free tickets. Go to Angel Studios website if you want to find out more information about that. But it's really, really cool. And also for those that maybe don't feel comfortable seeing the movie, you can also still buy tickets for other people to go see the film if you don't think you would be comfortable. So I think it's a brilliant strategy, and I think it's clearly working out for them. Again, this is what's being reported by the numbers, but also it's what's being reported by Box Office Mojo. Again, Box Office Mojo has notoriously been wrong in the past, but when they are in alignment with the numbers, that makes me give a little bit more credence and a little bit more confidence in what's being reported by the numbers versus what's being reported by Deadline. So again, this is an updating story. Whether or not this gets fixed, whether or not Deadline is going to update the numbers to say very clearly Sound of Freedom actually won the holiday frame, actually won July 4th. It's again anyone's game. We could also end up seeing the numbers, adjust their numbers down. But even if it happens, even if the lower number is true, the one being reported by Deadline, that still means that Dial of Destiny will have barely beaten Sound of Freedom. And with all the roadblocks in the way of Sound of Freedom, that is a huge victory, even if it gets second place. But, of course, the big news is still talking about Dial of Destiny. So if that 53% number does actually hold, that would mean that Dial of Destiny would come in at the number 2 spot. But they at least raised the question over at Deadline, hey, could we potentially see Insidious end up doing a little bit better? Let's see if we can find out anything like this. It says, some believe it will be a close call this coming weekend between Indy and Insidious, directed by Patrick Wilson. Interesting. I didn't know it was going to be directed by him. While Sony is only spotting 18 to 20 million at 3,000 theaters on the movie that cost a thrifty $16 million, and that's the reason why I suspect that film will definitely make its money back quite easily. Others see it at higher tracking at $23 million. So that's the reason why they are suspecting that we could end up seeing that happen for the actual movie itself. They're saying that putting a 5-day haul at 83.6. The movie follows the second weekend path of the older guys skewing titles like No Time to Die, which had a 57 to 60% decline. It's looking at around 24 to 25. So this is the reason why there are some speculating that you could see Insidious Red Door beating Dial of Destiny, because they are suspecting if it follows the same path, meaning if it doesn't fall off a cliff, based off of the metrics I'm seeing. So again, I think that they're mostly basing this off of the day-to-day drops. What I'm interested to see is what is that July 4th holiday drop compared to Wednesday? We should get those numbers a little bit later today. But what kind of drop do we see there? And if we start to see some catastrophic level drops, I think that these estimates start to change. But there is absolutely a situation where Red Door is able to beat out Dial of Destiny. Let's just say it's losses for Dial of Destiny in any of these situations, because in either case, it is not making anywhere close to the amount of money it needs to break even. We talked about this on the Good Morning Asgard podcast yesterday. It was just released that Dial of Destiny could have actually cost well north of $300 million, and that is based off of a report that Doctor Strange 2, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we just got this from tax documents from the UK. This was reported in Forbes the other day, and it says that movie, talking about Doctor Strange, cost an extra $100 million more than what had been estimated, putting that movie's title as costing Disney $300 million versus $200 million. Now, you have to keep in mind as well that there was about a $50 million tax rebate on that film because they shot in the UK, meaning the actual production cost itself was $350 million. That's not a $350 million movie. You look at a movie like this, you look at a movie like Dial of Destiny, and you take into account that, hey, is Disney overspending on other projects, and are we underestimating what those numbers probably are? If that indeed holds for their other projects, that $300 million you start to realize, wait a minute, you're telling me that $300 million production budget for Dial of Destiny could end up being actually closer to $350, maybe even $400 million if it follows something very similar to what we saw with Doctor Strange 2. And I believe a lot of, if not a large chunk of Dial of Destiny was shot in the UK. So guess what? Within a year, we will find out those numbers and we'll have a better idea of how much this film actually costs and how much money that this studio is going to end up losing. Because remember, this film is doing abysmal, especially when you compare it to Crystal Skull. This film has to make a crap ton of money to break even. As of right now, with what has been reported, this movie is looking at around $350 to $450 million in financial losses. Now, obviously, that's going to go down quite a bit, but still, when you're looking at a film, probably end up still being $250 to $350 million in the red for a studio and as a quote-unquote tentpole movie. Bad times ahead for Disney, especially when you look at all of their other films set to come out. But I did want to talk about, again, these other films. You also have Joyride coming out. You also have the other weekends coming out for Elemental, No Hard Feelings, etc. Really nothing a whole lot exciting happening at the box office, but to me, the real story is Sound of Freedom. It's coming in the number 3 movie of this coming weekend. Again, not a whole lot of competition, but still, the fact that it's even in the discussion is quite impressive. And the fact that there's even a chance that it beat out Dial of Destiny. And again, for those who are confused by this, for those who are going to put the comment saying, but it did beat it. Again, according to the numbers, and I'm going to try and repeat it, see if Tony updated his metrics at all. So far, he has not. This says right here that the movie ended up beating, sorry, I'm on the wrong article, that this movie ended up winning out July 4th. Talking here about Dial of Destiny, right? So according to them, Dial of Destiny made 11.6, so around $11.7 million, whereas for Sound of Freedom, it made 11.5. That's according to Deadline's numbers. The numbers and also Box Office Mojo are saying otherwise. They are reporting $14.2 million. I know a lot of people are running with that. It'll be interesting to see if these numbers get adjusted or not. In either case, though, huge win for Sound of Freedom. Congratulations to them. Go in and support that movie, whether you're seeing the movie or whether you're just supporting it financially through their Pay It Forward campaign. It's very important for us to, I think, get the message out there. And it's interesting to me that a film like Dial of Destiny, which is going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars for Disney, may have actually lost on July 4th, on Independence Day of all days, to a movie that they actually at one point had the rights to. It was a 20th Century Fox production. When they got over the rights, they decided not to move forward with it. Angel Studios then decided to buy the rights to them to distribute the film. Again, the film had essentially been done, and Disney just decided not to put it out. Starts to make you ask questions about the people at Disney. Why would you not want this movie out there? Well, sounds like to me, there's some questions to be had. But what are y'all's thoughts about this? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, like the follow button, obviously smash the rumble button as well. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a special shout out to all of my members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above, starting off first with my members over on Patreon: Father Luca Illick, Hymir Irie Hymason, Garrett Searles, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange Chat Reviews, check out his YouTube channel by the same name, Laura, the Monomator General's Story, Rosetta Allen, check out her YouTube channel, Eagle Rider, and Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel by the same name as well. To my Subscribe Star peeps, Zion Voders, Matt317, check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, The Beer Guru, and ZK Man, who you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, and Robert Barnes, the amazing lawyer. So thank y'all very much for being my supporters at the Keep It the Bifrost level and above. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, go ahead and check out that top link in the video description below to find out ways to sign up to support the channel and to be able to get access to things like the shoutouts, but also to giveaways. I have an exclusive giveaways channel on my Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff, and also access to an exclusive podcast that I do once or twice a month, depending on what I'm able to get accomplished, especially over the course of this crazy, crazy busy summer. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.